Good morning. Good afternoon, everybody. Stereo police. It's a nice day. It's a lot warmer today. I don't need to be bundled up. So my previous two vids were really kind of the introduction to a review that I'm going to be doing on a speaker that I am waiting to be shipped to me. The Tekton Uruz. Don't count on me for the pronunciation, please. Uruz. I'm going to just say Uruz. Uruz. I'm going to say Uruz. To be a good reviewer, and I'm going to begin the review now just because I've been doing some research about the overall design of the speaker. I want to tell you why I find it interesting. And I kind of covered that in the previous two videos, even though the title of those videos didn't have the Tekton Uruz in the title. It says speaker review part 1 and 2, but that's what it is. So I'm going to label this one part 3. I tried to do a little research. I put in a call to Tekton. I talked to a very, very nice lady who and I asked her if I could get a little bit of information. I explained to her that the website was a little bit vague as to the specifications of the speaker. I told her I was interested in finding out a little bit more about the speaker design, about the crossover points, about nerdy stuff. She was very, very nice, but she told me that I needed to talk to Eric, that he wasn't there. And I gave her my number and my name. I told her that I'd ordered a pair, and she looked me up and said, yeah, it's going to take about 8 weeks. Wow. And I guess it's the COVID thing, maybe. The COVID effect. So, I asked if perhaps Eric could call me back. And lo and behold, that evening, about 8 o'clock my time, he did. However, I let Eric know that the nature of my questions. I asked him if he had about 15-20 minutes, and he appeared to be taken aback by that. I think he thought I only had this quick question I was going to fire off to him. He gave me a quick answer, but that's not it's not the nature of the information I need. So I kindly asked him if he would call me back at his convenience. And that was 2 nights ago. And I'm still waiting for a call. I somehow am not expecting a call back. I don't know why, it's just my gut. But either way, I'm going to trudge forward with my attempt at describing these speakers, my attempt at just preliminarily discussing what I know about them. Because one day I'll be getting them. And to start out with, I wanted to find out, this is one of the things I was going to ask Eric. Forgive me, I don't know who Eric is. I don't know his last name. I was in a rather compromising position when he called, so I didn't have a pen and paper. But I was going to ask him about the name of the speaker, you know, where it derives from. Uruz. But I did a little bit of Googling today, and hell, I still don't know what exactly the name derives from. I see that it seems to be indicative of some kind of a symbol, some kind of a Nordic thing. The symbol has meaning to it: strength, vitality, some warrior kind of thing. It also symbolizes some kind of an animal, bison, ox, some kind of thing like that. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to know. I'm not going to pretend to look something up and then be instantly have Mick wisdom and pretend that I knew all along. I don't know what he was thinking, so I don't know exactly how this name represents the speaker. I don't know, and in this world of speaker naming and audio naming, there's some weird names out there of audio equipment. You know, I don't know how these companies come up with this stuff. I mean, it's audio equipment. I remember back in the day, things just had numbers. Even cars have weird names. But a lot of car names don't really represent anything. Camry. Some of them make sense, like Expedition. I'm a number guy. I have a Ram 1500. Ram is the model. I know what that is. It's an animal, and it makes sense because, you know, trucks work. You want them to be strong. But I don't know. Then you have like the Toyota Avalon. Okay, I know what Avalon is, a mythical place, and maybe this car is like, you know, you ride in the Avalon and you go to this mythical, wonderful place when you're in the car. I don't know. But I'm not sure how, like, you know, like the shit corporation names all their stuff after. I don't know anything about this Nordic stuff. Never learned it. Never learned mythology, if that's what that is. I was too busy studying engineering. After 2 engineering degrees and studying law and intellectual property law now, never had time to study mythology. Just never was my thing, so I don't know anything about it. I'm not going to pretend to, but I am interested in how you pick a name and how that relates to what the speaker or what the thing actually does. So if you pick a name of something and it stands for like warrior-like strength, then does that mean the speaker's supposed to have strength? For me, I don't know. Or you know, like some of these names that shit gives their, that I can't even pronounce, you know, that shit gives their stuff. Is it supposed to be related to what the equipment does? Or is it just cute? Hey, I'm not criticizing. These are questions that I ask. I always like just a good number, you know. That was always my thing, a number, like a number. think the Japanese like numbers. Model number 1652AZ6. That's my baby right there. I think if I had a speaker company, I'd probably I'd go for anatomical names. No one's done that yet. That'd be cool. Anatomy. The vitreous humor. No, the humerus bone. That's my cheap line of speakers. The humerus. The sternum. The medulla oblongata. Nah, that's not a good one. Shit. I just spilled something. Hang on a second. I just got a text. Oh, man. The corpuscle. Oh, man. I can't remember any anatomical names. My mini monitors would be called the phalanges. Or the phalange. My horn. How about the mandible now? The mandible is interesting. It's the only moving part of the skull, of the head. It's the only moving bone of the head, and it's really not even attached. They can move in all directions. 6 degrees of freedom. Oh. That's not a good name for a speaker. Oh, the sinus node that's in the heart. That's a good name for my electrostatic series, the sinus node. The rectum. That's my subwoofer. My ultra expensive exotic series would be the Vast Deference. That's for that would be the perfect name for a speaker. That's my $60,000 line. $60,000 speaker. The Vast Deference. Can you imagine that being reviewed? Headlines in stereophile. Review of the Vast Deference. I can't think of any more anatomical names. I'm at a loss. I mean, I can think of some ones that are, yeah. All right, well. The retina. I said the cochlea, right? That's the horn-loaded series. The semicircular canal. That's the option. That's the optional throat. That's the optional horn to the cochlea series. Anyway, I don't have a clue what the Uruz means, but I'm guessing it is that Norse symbol of some kind. But moving right along, one of my subscribers was kind enough to somehow figure out the model of the woofer. The woofer mid-range, it's used in the or use. Oh, and it happens to be an Eminence, made in the USA, Kentucky, Legend B102. And this speaker is a guitar speaker. It's a paper cone. There's this little frequency response graph down there. Looks like it's good up to about, maybe 3 kilohertz. It's got some interesting teal small parameters. If you look at that VAS, right? Oh, wait a minute. The inherent resonant frequency, 48 hertz. Well, I'm going to talk about this in a minute because I put this on a speaker calculator. And let me back up a little bit before I get into detail about this. But this speaker, these teal small parameters are such that, and I'll get into this in a minute, that this speaker is pretty versatile in that it can go either way in terms of being used in a sealed enclosure or a vented enclosure. And some speakers are based on the compliance of the speaker. They're either one or the other. Based on the QTS, the VAS. They're one or the other. And some of them fall right in the middle where you could go either way. You could make a nice sealed enclosure or a nice vented enclosure. Some of them are designed for bandpass only. They're so out there, and I'm not going to get into detail about that, but drivers are designed kind of like that. I don't want to get too nerdy here. I love speaker design. I'm not that good at it, but it's fun to play around with it as an amateur. Let me read something about the speaker that from Parts Express, because they sell it there. It's an 8-ohm speaker. It's a 10-inch bass guitar speaker. I'm reading from Parts Express. It says, Eminence's best all-purpose broad bandwidth bass guitar speaker. This unit exhibits lots of punch and is great for pop and slap bass, jazz, and rock and roll. The cast frame speaker is the ideal replacement or upgrade for many bass players, made in the USA. 200 watts RMS, 2-inch voice coil, 8 ohms, frequency range 44 hertz to 4K, sensitivity 93 dB, magnet weight 45 ounce. Okay. That's what Parts Express has to say about it, and they're selling it for, where's that price? Around $100. $104. Was $144. I've looked on other websites, and some people are selling for more than that, some a little less, but this is actually a pretty high quality speaker. This thing is a brick S house of a speaker. It really, really is. Again, a cast aluminum frame. It's a paper cone. I want to talk about that in a minute. But it's a brick S house. Why not just say it's a brick shit house of a speaker? And it's a guitar speaker. Now, in actuality, what are the design differences between a guitar speaker and a speaker for hi-fi or a speaker for professional use, for sound reinforcement? They're all built the same way, but they changed certain parameters. Well, first of all, these commercial speakers, guitar speakers, are more rugged. They're built with larger diameter. They're built for a higher power capacity. Certainly, someone on the stage, or someone in professional use doesn't need to have their equipment die on them in the middle of a performance. So this is 200 watts. And they're rugged as hell. The surrounds are rugged. You don't want the surrounds falling apart. They're usually built to handle temperature, broad temperature ranges a lot better. Usually built to be more weather resistant. But just in terms of how they sound, the guitar speakers are actually built for tonality. Guitar players are, they're all about tone. So when you go look at replacement speakers for guitar amps, there's a bunch of them, and there's a bunch of different 10-inch models, a bunch of different 8-inch models, things like that. And why are there so many different 10-inch models? Why isn't there just one? Well, they're all different in tone. And that tone is, it all depends on the magnet strength. It depends on the paper, the material of the paper, the thickness of the paper, the kind of surround that's being used. In this case, this has a whizzer cone. So there are many factors that go into tone. So the designer here has chosen this for a reason. I'm sure it's a damn good speaker. A lot of people have raved about the lore, and I'm really excited about hearing it. There's nothing inherently wrong about using a guitar speaker for a consumer product. I think it's, again, audacious and awesome that this designer has chosen to use this speaker. Good for him. And it's pretty cool because I listen to rock and roll music, mostly. And, a lot of rock and roll music is produced from these speakers. And to listen to it, to be originally produced from the speaker and then to hear it out of the speaker in my own home, that's pretty cool. It's interesting. So, also I find that guitar speakers and also paper cones, I'm a big fan of paper. Let me give you, I'm also a big fan of bad analogies too. I love hearing bad analogies, and I love making my own up. Paper, of all of the speakers I've ever had, and I've had a lot, I think paper, in terms of bass and mid-range, cones, that is, I'm excluding tweeters. Paper is not a good material for a tweeter, in my experience, but I've had really good experiences with paper for mid-range drivers as well as woofers. And my bad analogy is paper is sort of the organic non-GMO of speaker materials. Sort of, kind of. It's always, to me, produced more of a warm, earthy, just very natural tone. Natural sounding tone. It's hard to describe. I've always had a hard time describing sound. And that's the best way I can describe it. And it's going to be really interesting to hear this one. So I was really glad to see this is paper. And also interesting, I want to fit this in, is that there are two, there's an airplane cruising over. There are two versions of these Legend speakers. Hopefully I printed out the other one. Yeah. There's the Legend B102 and there's the Legend BP102. And the BP102 does not have the whizzer cone. And they're very similar. And the surrounds look a little bit different. This has a multi-corrugated, multi-roll surround. And this is the BP102, which is not used in the Uruz. And the B102 that is used has the whizzer cone. And it seems to have like a single roll surround. Seems to. And the surround also on both of these speakers is not, it doesn't appear to be a separate, I can't tell, but it doesn't appear to be a separate material of surround. It appears to be part of the paper cone, but it's just treated. So it's not a separate material, it's paper, part of the cone, but it's just been treated. Now, if you go back to the BP102, which is not used, you see that the mid-range in the frequency response graph gets a little lumpy. You know, the gravy's a little lumpy there. Mid-bass, mid-range. Little Rock of Gibraltar going on there. But when we go to the B102 that is used, all that gets smoothed out. Nice smooth frequency response. And I gotta believe that a bit of that is brought to you by the changes in the single roll surround, as well as the whizzer cone in the middle. That whizzer, I think, takes care of some of that lumpy gravy there in the middle. I believe. I think that's the nature of the whizzer. That's what it does. Now, let me get into something else here. I calculated the Uruz. That's why I keep meaning to say Uruz. I'm going to try to stick with that. Hopefully that's the way to pronounce it. The Uruz is, I calculated from its external dimensions. It's approximately a 100 liter, approximately, from the external dimensions, about a 100 liter volume speaker. It's probably a little less because that's the external dimensions, and then the basket takes up some space, the ports take up some space, internal bracing might take up some space, the crossover. But then you add some acoustic stuffing in there that effectively increases the volume, maybe takes it back to its original 100 liters. So let's get back to the claimed frequency response of the speaker online, which is 30 hertz, which I still have a hard time believing. The B102 right here says the usable the B102 that is used, the spec sheet says the usable frequency range is 44 hertz to 4K. Now, of course, that could be changed in a ported box. Now, Eminence provides Legend B102 suggestions for boxes. Here's where things get a little interesting. There's a bunch of suggestions for both sealed boxes and sealed boxes as well as ported boxes, but the first one's called the large vented guitar cabinet. And there are the teal small parameters. And the big ones that really make a difference are the FS, the resonant frequency of the mechanical parts, the QTS, which is the QES and the QMS in parallel. Is the QTS on here? You have to calculate that, but that's the the mechanical quality factor and the electrical quality factor in parallel. That's the ability of the mechanical parts to damp the speaker, and then the ability of the electrical parts to damp the speaker motion, and the two are run in parallel, so it's always going to be smaller than the lowest number there. And then, so that's called the QTS, meaning Q total. And then the VAS, which is the there's a something called the compliance of the speaker. And compliance, I'm on a tangent, I shouldn't even go there, but the compliance, think of compliance is how easily something moves. Like if you go up to a parked car that has its brakes on and you push it, it's not very compliant. Doesn't want to comply with your orders to move. But if you go up to a bicycle and push it, it moves. It's compliant. It wants to comply. Well, there's a calculation for compliance, usually given as a C, but that doesn't work in our calculation, so we have to convert that compliance over to a volume equivalent compliance called VAS. And that's a volume of air that the same size piston of the speaker would have to move that's equivalent to that compliance. That's the VAS. So that's, you put VAS, FS, and QTS into a calculator,